If something trained to attack suddenly refuses, it means it sees something you don't. The rain hit hard enough to sting, each drop tapping against my jacket like it was trying to tell me to turn back, but I kept walking, counting steps the way I always did, 12 from the curb to the crosswalk, another 8 to the broken patch of sidewalk I'd memorized months ago. The city lived in patterns if you couldn't see it, rhythms, sounds, textures under your feet, and tonight something felt off, too quiet in the wrong places, too tense in the air, like a held breath waiting to snap. Then I heard it, not loud, not dramatic, just a low vibration that settled deep in my chest before my ears could even register it. A growl, controlled, restrained, but powerful enough to make every instinct I had left pause mid-step. I stopped without meaning to, rain dripping down my face, my hand tightening around the cane I barely needed anymore. "Sir, don't move." A voice called out, sharp, urgent, somewhere ahead and to my right, boots splashing against wet pavement as someone moved fast. "That dog is not friendly." Another voice added, quieter but edged with something I recognized, not fear exactly, but respect for something dangerous. I exhaled slowly, adjusting my stance, trying to map the space around me through sound alone. The chain came next, a metallic pull stretched tight, followed by a single step, heavy, deliberate, closer than I expected, too close. I could feel it now, the presence, like standing near a loaded engine. Contained power humming just beneath the surface. "Rex, hold," the first voice commanded, firm but not fully confident, and that's when I knew this wasn't under control. Animals like that didn't hesitate unless something had already changed. The rain softened for a second, or maybe everything else just faded, because all I could hear was breathing, not mine, deeper, steadier, right in front of me, inches away. He'd brushed against my hand, and I froze, not out of fear, but because something about that moment felt familiar, like a memory I couldn't quite reach. A field somewhere overseas, sand instead of concrete, another dog once trained for something similar, one that had stayed by my side longer than orders required. My fingers twitched before I could stop them, lifting slowly into the space between us. "Easy," I said quietly, my voice barely cutting through the rain, and everything around me shifted. The voices stopped, the movement paused, like the whole street was watching a decision being made. The chain didn't pull tighter, the growl didn't rise. Instead there was a brief, almost imperceptible pause, and then a soft brush against my palm, not aggressive, not hesitant, just there, a choice, and somewhere behind me someone whispered, "Why isn't he reacting?" But I didn't answer, because I felt it before anyone else understood it. This wasn't a mistake, it wasn't hesitation, it was recognition. And I had no idea what that meant, yet the moment his nose touched my palm, something inside me shifted. Not fear, not relief, something quieter, something I had not felt since before everything went dark, and I realized I was holding my breath like everyone else, waiting for the next move that never came. "Rex, back," the officer said again, sharper this time, boots scraping against wet concrete as he stepped closer. But the dog did not move away. If anything, he stayed exactly where he was, steady, grounded, like I was the only fixed point in a world that had suddenly lost its balance. I lowered my hand slightly, expecting him to pull back, but he followed the motion, just enough to keep contact, and that was when the whisper started, not loud, but enough. "That is not normal," someone muttered, another voice closer now, tense. "He responds to commands immediately." I tilted my head, listening, mapping the distance between each voice, the weight of their concern, the confusion underneath it. "What is his name?" I asked, keeping my tone calm, because calm was the only thing holding this moment together. There was a brief pause before the officer answered. "Rex," like saying it might change something. I nodded slightly, letting the name settle. "Rex," I repeated, softer, and the dog exhaled, a low, steady sound that brushed against my wrist. Not a warning, not a threat, just presence, and it brought something back. To me, A memory I had not visited in years, sand under my boots, heat instead of rain, a handler beside me telling me the same thing over and over, trust the dog, even when you do not understand. Especially then, I swallowed, the past and present overlapping in a way that made my chest tighten. "He is not going to hurt me," I said, not to the officers, but to myself, and maybe to Rex too, because I felt it the moment the words left my mouth. A subtle shift, like a line had been crossed that no one else could see. "Sir, you need to step back slowly," the officer insisted, closer now. I could hear the tension in his breathing, controlled but strained, like he was preparing for something to go wrong. "I cannot step back if I do not know where I am stepping," I replied quietly, and that seemed to stop him. Just for a second, long enough for the rain to fill the silence again, long enough for Rex to move first, not away, not forward, but beside me, aligning himself at my left side with a precision that made my heart skip. It was not random. It was not uncertain. It was trained behavior, protective positioning, the kind I had only ever experienced in one place, one life. "Why is he doing that?" someone asked, disbelief cutting through their voice. I did not answer, because I did not have one. All I knew was that the space around me felt different now, safer in a way that did not make sense, and when I shifted my weight slightly, testing the ground beneath me, Rex adjusted with me, matching the movement like he had been doing it for years, like he already knew where I needed to go before I did, and that was when it hit me, cold and clear as the rain running down my face. This was not just a moment, not just a coincidence. Something had changed the second he chose not to attack, something neither of us fully understood yet, and whatever it was only just beginning. The rain kept falling, but it no longer felt like noise. It felt like a boundary, like everything beyond a few feet no longer mattered, because all I could focus on was the steady presence at my side and the way the world had gone completely still around it. "Rex, return," the officer said again, this time slower, more deliberate, like he was choosing each word carefully, but there was something missing now, something that had been there before, certainty. I could hear it in the slight pause between his commands, in the way his boots did not move any closer. Rex did not respond, not the way he was trained to. Instead he stayed aligned with me, shoulder near my leg, breath even, like he had already made a decision that did not require permission. I shifted my weight again, testing it. One small step forward, cautious, uncertain, and he moved with me instantly, matching pace, adjusting his position with precision that felt almost practiced, like we had done this before, like this was not the first time he had walked beside me even though I knew it was. A murmur spread through the people around us, disbelief, confusion, something else I could not quite name. "He is guiding him," someone whispered, the words hanging in the air heavier than the rain. Guiding, the word echoed in my mind, pulling something loose from the past, training grounds, structured routines, repetition until instinct replaced thought, a dog stepping into position beside a soldier, not just following orders, but anticipating need. I felt my throat tighten, because that was not something you forgot. Not really, even after everything else was gone. "Sir, stop moving," the officer said, more urgent now, but I could hear the hesitation behind it, the uncertainty of a situation that was no longer predictable. "I am not the one in control here," I answered quietly, and it was the truth, more than they understood, more than I did, because whatever was happening between me and Rex was not something I could command or explain. It was unfolding on its own terms. I took another step, slower this time, and Rex adjusted again, guiding my path just enough to keep me steady, avoiding something in front of me I could not see, a curb maybe, or debris washed loose by the rain. And that was when the realization settled in fully, cold and undeniable. He was not just staying with me, he was protecting me, not from something obvious, not from something loud, but from everything I could no longer perceive. The silence stretched, broken only by the sound of rain and distant traffic. until finally one of the officers spoke again, softer now, almost careful. "That dog has never done this before." And something in the way he said it made it clear this was not just unusual, it was impossible. I let out a slow breath, my hand hovering near Rex without touching him this time, respecting the space he had chosen to keep, and I said the only thing that made sense in a moment that made none at all. "Maybe he is not doing what he was trained to do." I paused, feeling the weight of that thought settle. "Maybe he is doing what he wants." And no one answered, because deep down, they knew that was the part that made this different, that made this real. And as I took another careful step forward with Rex still at my side, I realized something else just as unsettling. If he had chosen me once, he might not choose to leave. The space around us shifted in a way I could not fully explain, like the world had quietly rearranged itself without asking permission, and every step I took now carried a different weight because I was no longer alone in it. Rex stayed close, not touching, not crowding, just present, a constant beside me that adjusted with every movement I made. The rain softened slightly, or maybe I had just stopped noticing it, because something else had taken its place, awareness, sharper than anything I had felt in years. "This is not protocol," one of the officers said under his breath, the words tight, controlled, like he was trying not to disrupt whatever fragile balance had formed. "He should have disengaged by now." Another voice answered, quieter, almost uncertain. I could hear them repositioning, boots shifting carefully, giving space without fully stepping back, like they were witnessing something they did not want to interrupt, but did not trust either. I slowed my steps, letting my foot test the ground ahead before committing, and just before my shoe reached forward, Rex moved first, a subtle adjustment, guiding me a few inches to the right, avoiding something I could not see. A puddle maybe, or uneven pavement, it did not matter. What mattered was that he knew before I did, and that realization settled deep in my chest, steady and undeniable. "Rex," I said again, not as a command, not even as a question, just a name spoken into the space between us, and this time his response was clearer, not a movement I could see, but one I could feel, the slight shift in his posture, the way his breathing aligned with mine, like he was listening, not to the officers, not to the noise around us, but to me. "Sir, we need you to stop," the lead officer said again, closer now, but still holding back. I could hear the hesitation in his voice, the edge of something unfamiliar, loss of control. "I am stopping," I answered, and I did, right there in the middle of the sidewalk, rain dripping from my jacket, the city humming faintly beyond us, and Rex stopped too, perfectly still at my side, not restless, not distracted, just waiting. I let my hand lower slowly, this time not reaching for him, but letting it rest near where I knew he stood, and after a moment, he closed the distance himself. A gentle pressure against my fingers, deliberate, calm, chosen, and something about that contact made everything else fade again, the voices, the tension, the questions, all of it reduced to background noise, because in that moment it was simple, clearer than anything had been in a long time. He trusted me, and I trusted him, without reason, without explanation, just a quiet agreement formed in the space between breath and instinct. "I need to move forward," I said softly, not to the officers, but to Rex, and then I took a step, and he moved with me again, guiding, adjusting, protecting in ways I could feel but not see, and behind us the silence grew heavier, filled with the weight of something no one could quite name, until finally the lead officer spoke again, slower now, almost careful. "If he keeps doing that, he is not just ignoring commands." He paused like the conclusion itself was difficult to accept. "He is making his own decisions." And I felt that truth settle beside me, as real as the dog walking at my side, as steady as the path unfolding beneath my feet. And for the first time since I lost my sight, I was not just reacting to the world around me, I was being led through it, by something that was never supposed to choose me in the first place. The moment I said I needed to move forward, Everything around us seemed to hold its breath again, like the city itself was waiting to see what Rex would do next, and for a split second I wondered if I had imagined it all. If the connection I felt was just a fragile illusion built on memory and instinct. But then he shifted beside me, firm and certain, stepping slightly ahead before settling back into position at my side, guiding without pulling, leading without force. And that was when I understood this was no accident, this was intention. "Sir, you need to stay where you are," the officer called out again. But there was something different now, less command, more uncertainty, like he was no longer sure who he was talking to, me or the dog. I paused just long enough to let my foot find stable ground, feeling the subtle change in pavement texture beneath my shoe, a crack maybe, or a shallow dip filled with rainwater, and Rex adjusted instantly, nudging my path just enough to keep me balanced. It was precise, controlled, the kind of movement that came from years of training, but there was something else layered into it, something softer, something that could not be taught. "He is correcting his movement," someone said behind me, voice low with disbelief. "That is not part of his current command set." I let out a slow breath, trying to steady the mix of emotions building in my chest, because this was not just surprising, it was personal, in a way I had not expected. I had spent years learning how to navigate a world I could no longer see, counting steps, memorizing sounds, relying on routines that kept everything predictable, controlled, safe. And now all of that was being quietly rewritten by something that was never meant to be part of my world, something that had chosen to step into it without hesitation. I took another step forward, slower this time, more aware, and Rex stayed perfectly aligned, adjusting his pace to mine with a fluidity that felt natural, effortless, like we had been moving together for far longer than a few minutes in the rain. "Rex, disengage," the officer said again, more firmly now, trying to reclaim control of the situation, but the command landed differently this time. It did not carry the same authority, the same certainty it had before, because Rex did not respond, not even a shift in posture, not even a hesitation. He remained exactly where he was, beside me, steady, present, and that silence spoke louder than any action I could hear. The tension behind me growing, the quiet recalculations, the unspoken realization that something fundamental had changed. "Why is he ignoring us?" another voice asked, frustration edging into the words. But I already knew the answer. Even if I could not explain it, he was not ignoring them. He was choosing something else, and that difference mattered more than they understood. I slowed again, letting my hand hover near him, not reaching, just acknowledging his presence, and after a moment, he leaned into that space once more, a brief, deliberate contact that grounded me in a way I had not felt in years. It was not just guidance, it was reassurance, a silent promise that I was not navigating this alone anymore, and that realization hit deeper than anything else, because for the first time since everything changed, since the darkness became permanent, I was not just surviving the world around me. I was moving through it with something that understood me without needing to see me, and as the rain continued to fall, and the voices behind us faded into the background, one thought settled clearly in my mind. This was not just a moment of coincidence or confusion, this was the beginning of something neither of us had been trained for, and whatever came next, it would not follow anyone else's rules. The longer we moved together, the more the world seemed to fall into a strange, quiet rhythm, one that did not belong to the officers behind us or the distant hum of traffic, but to the steady pattern of our steps, mine cautious and measured, his precise and unwavering. And with every foot I placed forward, I felt less like I was guessing and more like I was being guided through something I could not yet understand. "Rex, final command, return immediately," the lead officer said, his voice tighter now, edged with something that sounded closer to urgency than authority, and for a moment, I wondered if this would be the point where everything snapped back into place, where Rex would pull away and leave me standing alone in the rain again. But he did not move, not even a shift of weight, Not even a breath out of rhythm, he stayed, solid at my side, like the command had never reached him at all, and the silence that followed was heavier than anything before it. "He is not responding," someone said, disbelief clear now, no longer hidden behind control. "That is not possible," another voice replied, but there was no conviction behind it, only the slow realization that something impossible was already happening. I kept walking, not fast, not reckless, just steady, letting my foot find the ground while trusting the presence beside me to adjust where I could not see, and Rex moved with me again, guiding just enough to keep me aligned, his body creating a quiet boundary between me and everything else. And for the first time since this began, I noticed something else, something subtle but undeniable. The tension that had filled the air at the beginning was fading, not completely, but enough that the sharp edges of fear and command had softened into something quieter, something closer to watching than controlling. "Sir, can you hear me?" the officer called out, closer now but no longer rushing. "I need you to stop so we can secure the area." I slowed slightly but did not stop, not yet, because stopping felt like breaking whatever fragile connection had formed between me and Rex, and I was not ready to lose that. Not when it had just begun to make sense. "I hear you," I answered calmly, "but I think he is already doing that." I gestured slightly with my hand, indicating Rex without touching him, and there was a pause, a long one, filled only by the steady sound of rain hitting pavement. "He is trained to respond to threats," the officer said finally, his voice lower now, almost thoughtful. "Not to guide civilians." I nodded faintly, even though he could not see it, because that was exactly what made this different, what made this real. "Maybe he sees something you do not," I said, and the words lingered between us, not as a challenge, but as a possibility, and no one answered, because deep down they all knew that whatever Rex was responding to, it was not a command, it was something else entirely, something instinctive, something chosen. I took another step, feeling the ground shift slightly beneath my foot as we approached the edge of the sidewalk. And before I could adjust, Rex moved ahead just enough to block me, a firm but gentle stop that kept me from stepping too far, and I exhaled slowly, the realization settling deeper with every moment. He was not just staying with me, he was watching for me, anticipating what I could not see before it happened, and that level of awareness, that level of connection, it was not built in seconds. It was not created by chance. And yet here it was, forming in real time, rewriting everything I thought I understood about control and training and instinct. And as I stood there at the edge of something I could not see, with Rex steady beside me and the officer silent behind us, one thought rose above all the rest. If he could choose to stay when he was told to leave, then whatever came next would not be decided by commands anymore. The moment Rex stopped me at the edge, everything inside me tightened, not out of fear but recognition. Because that kind of interruption was not random, it was deliberate, trained, protective, the kind of movement that said do not go forward even if you think you can, and I stayed still, letting the rain run down my face while I listened to the silence around us stretch just a little longer than it should have. "What is in front of him?" one of the officers asked, his voice lower now, cautious, like he was no longer sure of the ground he was standing on. There was a brief pause, the sound of footsteps moving carefully ahead, then a quiet reply, "Drop off, about 3 feet down to the street." And I exhaled slowly, because without Rex I would have stepped straight into it, not dangerously, not dramatically, but enough to lose balance, enough to remind me that the world still had edges I could not see. And yet he had seen it, felt it, decided to stop me before I even realized it was there. "He blocked him before the step," another voice added, disbelief still lingering, but softer now, less resistant, more curious. I shifted my weight back slightly, and Rex adjusted with me, easing the pressure, guiding me just enough to reposition safely, and the movement was so smooth, so natural, that for a second I forgot this had all started just minutes Ago in tension and uncertainty, it felt practiced now, like a rhythm we had already learned together. "Rex," I said quietly again, not asking, not commanding, just acknowledging, and he responded in the only way that mattered, staying steady, present. The officers behind us did not interrupt this time. They did not rush forward or repeat commands. Instead, I heard something else, radios crackling softly, words exchanged in low tones, controlled, measured, like they were reassessing something bigger than the moment itself. "Dispatch, we have a K-9 not responding to handler commands," one of them said, his voice steady but carrying a weight I could not ignore. "Subject is a civilian, visually impaired. The dog is assisting." There was a pause before that last word, like even he had trouble accepting it. Assisting, not engaging, not controlling, but helping, and that single shift in language changed everything. I felt it in the way the air settled, in the way the tension eased just enough to breathe through. I took a careful step back from the edge, and Rex moved with me, guiding the motion without hesitation, and when I turned slightly, unsure of direction, he adjusted again, positioning himself so that I naturally followed his lead, and it was subtle, almost invisible, but undeniable. He was not just reacting anymore, he was directing. "He is leading him away from the drop," someone observed quietly, and there was no argument this time, no immediate correction, just acceptance, slow and reluctant but real. I paused once more, letting the moment settle, feeling the weight of what had just happened, because it was not just about avoiding a step, it was about trust, the kind that formed without permission, without explanation. And as I stood there with Rex beside me, the rain softening into a steady rhythm around us, I realized something that shifted everything again. This was no longer about whether he would follow commands, it was about what he would choose to do next. And for the first time since this began, I was not the only one waiting to find out. The word assisting lingered in the air long after it was said, not because it was loud, but because it changed everything that came before it, and I could feel that shift ripple outward in the quiet that followed. No one rushing, no one interrupting, just watching, waiting, trying to understand something that did not fit into the rules they knew. I adjusted my stance slightly, testing the space around me again, and Rex moved in sync, his presence steady, grounded, like he had already mapped the path ahead long before I could even imagine it. "Dispatch confirms handler override not responding," a voice said through the radio, calm but strained. "Stand by for further instruction." There was no immediate reply, just the soft crackle of static, and the distant sound of rain filling the gaps between words. And for the first time since this began, no one told me to stop. No one told Rex to return. The commands had faded into something else, observation, acceptance, maybe even a quiet surrender to what was happening right in front of them. I took a slow breath, letting the moment settle deeper, and then I moved forward again, cautious but certain, trusting the rhythm we had found, and Rex stepped with me, guiding just enough to keep me aligned, adjusting my path before I even realized I needed to change direction. It was not forceful, not controlling, just subtle corrections that made the world feel less uncertain beneath my feet. "He is maintaining position," someone noted softly, like they were documenting something rare, something that needed to be understood later. But for me, it was happening now, real and immediate, and every step made it clearer. This was not a temporary reaction, not a moment of confusion. This was a choice that continued with each second, each movement, each decision. Rex made to stay exactly where he was. I slowed again as the ground shifted beneath me, the faint vibration of passing cars somewhere ahead telling me we were closer to the street now. And before I could adjust, Rex moved slightly forward and angled his body, guiding me to the left, away from something I could not see, maybe a puddle too deep, maybe debris washed into the road. It did not matter. What mattered was that he knew, and he acted without hesitation. "He is redirecting him," the same voice said, quieter now, less disbelief, more recognition, and no one corrected it this time. No one challenged the observation, because they were all seeing the same thing unfold, something that did not need permission to continue. I let my hand hover near Rex again, not touching, just acknowledging, and after a moment he leaned closer, a brief contact that felt less like reassurance now and more like confirmation. As if he was telling me this was real, this connection, this movement, this understanding that did not rely on sight or command. "Sir," the lead officer said finally, his voice calmer than before, measured. "Where are you trying to go?" The question caught me off guard, not because I did not have an answer, but because it was the first time anyone had asked instead of instructed. I paused, feeling the rain against my skin, the steady presence at my side, and the path unfolding beneath my feet. "I was just trying to get home," I said quietly, and the words felt heavier than I expected, because home suddenly seemed further away than it had a few minutes ago, not in distance, but in everything that had changed along the way. There was another pause, longer this time, filled with something I could not quite name, and then the officer spoke again, softer now, almost careful. "Then let him lead." And in that moment, something settled completely, not just in the air around us, but inside me, a quiet acceptance of what was happening, of what Rex had chosen, and as I took the next step forward with him guiding me through a world I could not see, I realized this was no longer about getting home the way I had planned. It was about where this path would take us instead. And neither of us was turning back the moment he said let him lead. Something inside me settled in a way I could not explain, not relief, not certainty, something quieter, something deeper, like a part of me that had been waiting without knowing it had finally found what it was listening for. And I nodded slightly even though he could not see it, because the decision had already been made long before he said the words. Rex moved forward without hesitation, not pulling, not rushing, just a steady step that I followed instinctively, and for the first time since the rain began, I did not count my steps, I did not measure the distance, I did not try to predict what came next. I simply walked, trusting the rhythm we had built together in the span of a few minutes that felt longer than anything I had known in years. The ground shifted beneath my feet again, smoother now, less broken, and I recognized the subtle change. We were moving away from the uneven sidewalk toward a more open path, maybe a crosswalk, maybe a wider street. I could not see it, but I could feel the difference, and Rex adjusted with me, slowing slightly as if giving me time to match the new pace, his presence steady, constant, like a quiet line drawn between me and everything else. Behind us the voices had faded into something distant, not gone, but no longer pressing in, no longer trying to control what was happening, just observing, documenting, letting it unfold. "Keep visual contact," someone said, softly through the radio, but even that sounded less urgent now, more like a reminder than a command. I exhaled slowly, letting the sound blend with the rain, and for a moment I allowed myself to feel it fully, the shift, the difference, the way the world no longer felt like something I had to fight to understand, but something I could move through with guidance I did not have to question. I turned my head slightly, not because I expected to see anything, but because I felt something change beside me, and Rex responded instantly, adjusting his position just enough to keep me aligned, like he was reading movements I did not even realize I was making. And that awareness, that connection, it was not something that could be trained into existence in a moment. It was something chosen, something formed in real time between two beings that should not have understood each other this way. "You said you were heading home." The officer's voice came again, closer than before but still measured, still careful. I nodded faintly. "Yes," I answered, and then after a pause I added, "But I think he already knows the way." The word surprised me as much as anyone else, because I had no proof, no logic to support them, only the feeling that had been building with every step we took, the certainty that Rex was not just reacting to the moment, he was moving with purpose, and the silence that followed told me they heard it too, not the certainty, but the possibility. I took another step, and another, and Rex continued beside me, guiding, adjusting, choosing. And with each movement, the distance between what was supposed to happen and what was actually happening grew wider, until it no longer mattered what the rules had been at the start, because this was something else entirely now, something that did not belong to training or command or expectation, something that existed only in the space between trust and instinct. And as the rain softened into a steady whisper, and the city stretched out ahead of us in ways I could not see but no longer feared, one thought settled quietly into place, clear and unshakable. This was not where the story ended. This was where it truly began.